Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this event, which is a roadshow of our program that we are doing with Bacteria. Yeah, I'll quickly introduce Triple IT Hyderabad and then CI, the incubator. And as we proceed in the discussion, we will have Bacteria team introduce about the program. So, Triple IT Hyderabad was established in 1998. It's a research tech institution and offering undergrad and postgraduate program as part of as part of the innovation initiative that the institute was planning around. We back in 2008 we started the incubator, thinking that what if some of these students they choose the entrepreneurship path instead of joining some organization. With that with that we started this incubator. And initially there was some initially there was some low interest, but gradually it grew. So by 2012 we had some 65 startups, and post the bifurcation of the state back in 2014, when Telangana and Andhra happened, the minister visited us and said that why are we not taking any more startups? So we were running out of space, we were running out of bandwidth. So that's when the idea was T-Hub was mooted, and T-Hub also came to the same campus. So Triple IT Hyderabad, Indian School of Business, NALSA, Government of Telangana, all these entities came together and set up T-Hub. And most of T-Hub is now the current T-Hub is one of the largest incubators in the globe. So post that, our focus came to seeding early stage deep tech startups. So we started investing through. We were doing investments earlier also in startups through bunch of schemes, but post that we started doing it through a structured accelerator program called Avishkar. So it's a deep tech accelerator program. And we started, as I said, we started investing in startups through accelerator program. And since then, it has been a good journey. Under the umbrella of CI, we have three incubators: deep tech, med tech, and social tech. All three are supported by various patrons. Niti Aayog supports the social tech, which is called Atal Incubation, and med tech is supported by DBT BIRAC. And after that, and deep tech being the oldest one, which has been supported by MIT, TIDE, DST, and others. So our focus is a lot on research commercialization right now. We're productizing the academic research that is there, and few very interesting startups came out of there. One works into NLP. One came out of an NLP research of Professor Manish, and the other one came out of the computer vision CVIT lab of Triple IT on the CV side. So computer science and computer vision has been always the primary focus in the for us to enable startups in those domain, and AI and subdomain of AI, because there are 72 incubators in Hyderabad, so each of them are good in their own way. So Triple IT and all of them are very well connected. So the Hyderabad ecosystem is very well connected with each other. So in case some startups are need help from a different incubator, there is always a synergy, to move from one incubator to another, or joint incubation for them. So that is there. We also run Media Tech Accelerator, and so that's a quick brief. So Dinesh, now we would like to move to the panel discussion. The panel discussion is focusing on bunch of innovative deep tech startup in the area of CV, and the solutions that can come across with computer vision is what our idea is. And the focus is around that. How do this how do we see these solutions which is difficult to source for corporates in their multiple verticals that they are working on. Having said that, keeping that in mind, to understand where the community is going, we had a panel discussion plan to understand what all areas maybe we think that these are a bunch of the things that we are focusing on. What if something more interesting comes out during the suggestions? So our panelist is Mr. Narayan Murthy, who already gave the keynote. Then we have we have Rajat Aggarwal, who is the founder and co-founder and CEO for DreamView, which is a startup that interestingly backed by research of Triple IT and has been one of our most promising startups, in the journey. Then we have Pritam, who was earlier heading innovations for AB and Bev. And Surya from Pactera would be moderating the panel. Over to you.
So I'll just give a quick intro to Prabha and then Prabha can take it over. So Prabha is a very established leader and she leads our AI and advanced analytics practice. She is with us for over 2 years now. Prior to this, she was heading a startup, right? She herself has got her hands on startup and a very enthusiastic person who loves to do a lot of work around data and AI. She has got an industry experience of over 2 decades and she worked on multiple projects. Prior to Pactera, she was a kind of a co-founder for a startup by name Nova IQ. And further, it came as an acquisition by us. We acquired Nova IQ. As part of the acquisition, Prabha joined us. Prior to Nova IQ, she was with Nest Digital, leading that solution. Okay, so over to you, Prabha. Thanks.
Thank you, Dinesh. Thank you, Anubhav, for the introduction of the panel members. What we have seen, technology has been the active enabler for growth across many industries around the world for more than 4 decades now. Digitization created wealth of data for the enterprises. Data mining and analytics enabled businesses from understanding the consumer patterns, pockets of scope for better optimization, be in vendor selection, improving the employee efficiency, so on and so forth. So with the current day availability of infrastructure maturity, technology fitting in one's palms in the forms of smartphones and smartwatches, AI has stepped out of the research labs drastically in the last 1 decade. Corporate AI investments has grown from 12.75 billion US dollars in 2015 to 93.5 billion USD by 2021. So that's the growth of investment towards AI technology that's happening in the corporate world. Now we are in the age of building systems which can see the way humans can see and interpret multiple things from that vision and comprehend the way humans can do. So today we have the primary Lego blocks of corporate AI adoption, the investors and the innovators in our panel to discuss the opportunities and possibilities with us. So as Anubhav already introduced, Mr. Abhay Tandon, Mr. Pritam Datta, Mr. Rajat Aggarwal, and Mr. Narayan Murthy from Pactera. So we will start a discussion with the investors, the primary proponents of technology innovation. So I would like to start. Pritam Datta can also, give us some insights. What are the different business function areas, right? That can leverage from adapting AI, especially the computer vision capabilities in different industries, especially where we are focusing on more on retail and manufacturing space. How much is the business value potential, that is being derived by adopting to machine vision technologies? What size of investments the enterprises are ready to put up in these industries? So Mr. Pritam Datta, if you would like to go first.
Yeah, hi. I think thanks for inviting me to this panel. I think AI, computer vision are gonna be fundamental and are fundamental right now for most of the companies and especially consumer goods companies where it's pretty much kind of helps kind of create significant business value. The biggest use case I see is in retail trade execution, in sales force optimization, sales force route management for consumer goods companies. Because through AI and consumer vision, that the whole routes can be optimized. More, I would say, more productive salesman visits can be created. The competitor analysis, the SKU analysis can be done better. And, for any consumer goods company or retail company, those are some of the key parameters, like, which SKUs, which stacks are doing better, knowing that generates significant business value. And I think in my experience across Unilever, across AVI, Budweiser, I think we have seen a significant interest and investment in these areas, primarily because they are not only seen as differentiators, but they are seen as competitive edge. For example, in one of such examples for Budweiser, we have used consumer vision to create significant market differentiation and direct impact to the sales volume that gets generated. So, adding to what Prabha said, I would suggest that the opportunity is big in sales for consumer goods and retail from a display goods visibility space. And I think as it's just gonna increase on a very regular basis, and we are already seeing a quantum jump in terms of investment that's happening in this space.
Thank you for the insights, Mr. Datta. Mr. Aggarwal, would you like to add some points towards this?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. First of all, thanks for inviting me. So I think there are two main, when we talk about computer vision and AI, right? Particularly from the technology standpoint, there are many technologies now being deployed into the retail sectors to improve the business analytics and business performance, right? To kind of understand how people are reacting to different kind of purchases, how purchases are happening, and how we can improve the computer vision and AI system to that. I think that's the biggest problem, at least the technology community is kind of focusing on at the moment. And obviously, we have infinite number of solutions which we are presenting to different kind of spaces, like producing more different types of sensing devices, uh, producing different kind of software technologies to understand what is really happening based on the data. And then also, there have been many companies deploying robots into the retail stores to kind of do not only just sense the purchases, etc., but also kind of help the uh, buyers, into their journey so that the experience is extremely smooth, when somebody enters the retail store, right? So I think from if you have to speak about computer vision and the AI and the impact of it, I think from end to end, right? When somebody enters the store to, when somebody is leaving the store, right? The end-to-end journey is now being captured by computer vision and AI, and the whole industry is kind of going towards providing different kind of solutions from in different directions, right? And I think that trend, we have seen that trend in the last 10 years a lot, right? The number of companies coming up in that kind of space has increased, not just in US, but especially in India now, right? In India, we are seeing these kind of innovative technologies being deployed. I was in one of the store, and we saw one of the robots just going from one location to another location, and that was only seen in the countries like US couple of years back, right? But now we are seeing those kind of things happening in Hyderabad and Bangalore kind of places. At least that's where I saw. So I think this trend is definitely going to be exponentially increased in the next 5 years or 10 years or so. And we have to see how computer vision and AI can help all these things.
Thank you, Mr. Aggarwal. Narayana, would you like to share your thoughts?
So these are very good insights. In fact, as a company, we also have been doing computer vision projects. So in fact, one of the products or the platforms that we're trying to build, which is again, how to control the shrink for one of our existing customers, right? And if I can take the name, Prabha, it is Lowe's, right? Which you have been part of the project. So this is where we actually use computer vision to determine, what is the shrink that happens at each and every level. And then we are also trying to kind of capture the customer sentiment analysis as well at the same time, trying to understand which customer base or which kind of a product people are opting, and then we're also trying to kind of get the seasonality around that. So therefore, so this is going to be an interesting journey, and absolutely, I think this is a way forward for the entire industry.
Just to add a number to the business value that is associated with the shrink protection use case that Narayana has just mentioned, it actually saves about $700 million to the corporate in a year. So that's the kind of value, business value, the computer vision solution that we are building is going to, help them save those costs. Thank you so much, panelists, for sharing the views on the first point. Let me move on to the next thing. Yes, there are multiple opportunities. There are multiple business cases in the enterprises where AI and computer vision can be adapted and can make a difference. Let's come to the servicing part of it. What is the technological challenges that we are going to face, being the solution providers to address these business cases? So innovation is an everyday process, right? The more business value technology offers, more innovation is needed in offering those solutions in terms of speed and efficiency. In the AI language, we use the term accuracy. So it's the question to the panelists primarily from the innovation and the solution providing standpoint, the readiness of the technology to meet the business aspirations of the retail and manufacturing industries, especially in question. And what are the gaps that you see, and what, according to you, are the research areas to focus to bridge these gaps? Primarily on the computer vision technology space, where the challenges are actually sprouted from the leveraging the existing infrastructure. For example, the CCTV cameras, which are placed for surveillance, majority of the enterprises are trying to repurpose them and use them for the computer vision technology. So being in this space, what according to you are the challenges, and where is the need for more research to take place? Mr. Datta, if you would like to go first on that.
I think from an innovation perspective, there is great strides have been made, but I think we are still at the very edge of how we can use AI and computer vision, especially in traditional industries like retail and consumer goods. There is huge possibilities. I just mentioned the sales force part, but if I look at logistics, if I look at supply chain, I think there are multiple use cases which can be explored. The challenge, however, is that most of the traditional retail or CPG companies, like while they've invested in AI, do not have that kind of resources or focus to kind of build the capability that is needed there. And I think that's where companies like yours or other AI based startups, AI based companies come in, because they can provide them best in class solution and knowledge which is required by these companies to win in the market. I think the biggest change what I am seeing in business leader is that AI, from being like what you call a nice to have, is becoming a must have in most of the digital transformations now, and is at the forefront of this change.
Absolutely. Yes. Mr. Aggarwal, would you like to add something?
Yeah, sure. So you asked, like, what are the different areas where, or what is the status of the technology readiness at the moment, right? So I think earlier I also spoke that there are different kind of segments where computer vision and AI can help, and as Mr. Datta also mentioned that there are different kind of applications where this can be applied. In terms of readiness, I feel that in terms of AI and machine learning, it's still in the early stages. Although we have done a lot of progress in terms of research and development, but the practical systems are a little far away from being deployed. The major reason being, obviously the accuracies that we want. We don't want to have, wrong information given to us, because it's just better to deploy a person or an operator to give us that information rather than just a system, right? So let's just consider an example. If I have an empty shelf, it's better for just me to see from here than to just get wrong information from a sensor, and just fulfill that. So I think we, as a whole community, we have to not just keep think about that, okay, this is general AI which can be used. Okay. The systems have to be very, very specifically made. Now, I would like you to counter, so the point that you mentioned, Prabha, that, people are trying to uh, use the current surveillance cameras and try to make a system so that we can use those surveillance cameras and make a 99% accurate system. Well, based on our research, and I'm the technology guy, I think it's going to be difficult. That
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
ideology itself is has a problem, because yes, I understand that you don't want to increase the cost, and you don't want to change the infrastructure to make the systems better, and you want to leverage the current infrastructure. But that's part of the problem. The current surveillance cameras are not that good,
Cannot
where
do
you
it.
can put your very accurate AI models and get time and hope for 99% accuracy. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
We make at DreamView, we make different kind of cameras every day,
that's
and
right.
this problem is very, very common to us, that people say that, okay, just give us the software and we have our own camera. We're like, hey, think of this like a human system, right? If you have bad eyes, you're gonna take bad decisions, right? Because you're not gonna see those things properly. So you have to correct your eyes first. You have to go and get the eye surgeries done and get the proper vision, right? So I
Yeah,
think having the sensing devices is important. So at least I don't believe that we'll be able to bring the systems with the current infrastructure. Obviously, we have to make the changes, but yes, I understand that we have to make these systems in such a way where these are low cost. It's not like, okay, we are asking these retail companies to put like $10,000 system.
yeah,
Obviously, that's not going to work, right? I can put like army of 100 operators into the warehouse and get that same thing done, right? So obviously, there has to be an ROI which should match. But I think we have to, if you're thinking about highly accurate systems, we have to get away with the thought of not
yes,
changing the infrastructure, okay? Because
yeah,
I feel that's one gap. uh,
yeah,
and we have to also kind of learn from other kind of industries like logistics and warehouse, that how these guys are deploying machines and robots these days to improve the performance, right? I
yeah,
would say that if for robotics, the technology is very matured these days, where we can, just buy off the shelf robot base and just use it in any of the system.
right.
Okay, the technology is very, very mature. In fact, you can get very robust robots which has like a safety rating, etc., in the market, and can deploy into your places, right?
Right.
Um, so we have to think of those kind of innovation programs into these industries, so that obviously every other segment has to contribute something to help us achieve the 99.9% accuracies that we're all aiming for.
Actually, very good point you brought up, Mr. Aggarwal. AI has been a victim, for having high expectations, over expectations. AI, for some people, it is like Rajnikant's Robo movie, right, which can do everything, and probably the most accurate way. And we always battle with our false positives, false negatives, and then it's definitely challenging to prove the business value it brings. But I believe there is always a start point. The first step in the door is always first prove the value, Even though you can't do the highest accuracy, but at least you can show what can be done to start the conversation about investing in better hardware, better camera systems. Obviously, computer vision highest accuracy models cannot be built with the surveillance cameras where somebody physically is sitting and watching the monitor. The same thing that you will, and your analogy was perfect, that if you have bad eyes, you can't see it clearly. Similarly, if the camera is not good, the model can't see it clear enough. Thank you so much for that. With that note, let me get to the next point. As we are talking about, AI has higher expectations as I said, victim of higher expectations. AI is also a scapegoat and blameworthy for creating disparity in the workforce, automating and taking away the jobs of the workforce, existing workforce. How, as companies adapting, probably Mr. Datta can give us more insights into this as an enterprise adapting AI. How does the workforce see this? How do you see the change management challenges? Let's say, for example, if I'm replacing my computer vision system, for example, just to do the surveillance, I pay 3 people in 3 shifts, 8 hours, one person sitting and observing this, and then I would probably use a computer vision solution there and cut down my workforce to 1/3 or probably 1/4. How is this challenge, and how do you look at this as this technology and the workforce coexisting together and propelling the business growth?
So, a couple of things. I think, it's always the question of positioning. I think, the way it has worked for us is we have always positioned AI as a tool, which is to start with replacing work that we will not like our, say, employees to be doing. For example, automating invoice processing, automating, say, sifting to multiple hundreds and thousands of resumes. For example, when I was in Unilever, we did a program where through AI, we were sifting through close to 1 million resumes to identify the top 100 people who will become part of our graduate leaders. Now, it was a very manual process, a lot of people involved, and none of them really used to love the job. So kind of putting that promise of, how AI can help to enrich your life, how can it help do your jobs better is a critical element. Or for example, last year we implemented a AI-based solution to improve our cash flow and order management. Now, prior to that, the call center agents used to take the calls through a routine process, which was very manual. Now, when we use the platform, they were able to get more insights, were able to get more more active in interacting or engaging to the customers. And I think that helps, because the way we positioned is that AI is not here to replace your jobs. It's here to enrich your jobs and help you do better jobs. So I think that positioning, that mindset is there. And yeah, means any new technology would always have a resistance to adoption. We are seeing this in all sectors. It's just about timing and, finding the right middle point.
Absolutely. So AI is primarily your virtual assistant, so that you can spend your job in better productive work, probably which gives you the pleasure of solving better problems. With that, I would like to mention one thing. So as a company, when we have actually built a network route optimization solution using deep reinforcement learning for one of the logistic customers in India. And that's how we placed, okay, there is a network engineering team who does this job, and probably to optimize a complete end-to-end network, they would take about 10 to 15 days. And then they wouldn't be possibly focusing on something else while they're doing their job. So that's where we said AI, we can create a virtual assistant for you that does about 90% of the job for you, and for you to actually give your expert remarks and corrections so that you can take it to your business stakeholders. And that's a wonderful point, Mr. Datta. Thank you for that. Narayana, would you like to add something to that?
No, absolutely. We see the change management becomes a very important factor in some of these engagements. But I would like to cover a few more points which are more on the business side as well, right? See, for example, when I started my career, right, I used to work in a warehouse where my primary focus used to be like the accuracy of the inventory, right? And then people physically used to go and then check those inventories and then come back with all those sheets, and we used to compile that, and then trying to understand which inventory is moving in which direction, and it used to be like a nightmare. And then subsequently what happened, we had the systems of record have come into picture, like the ERPs came into the picture, and then they tried to automate kind of most of the stuff that we have been trying to manually do. But still there is a lot of gap in terms of how do we improve the the accurate forecasting accuracy, how do we integrate the supply with the demand, right? And then how do we make sure that our supply pattern is actually matching with the demand pattern, so that our inventory turns can be improved drastically, right? So if you try to look at technology as an enabler in this whole space, so in the journey it actually helped us to improve the in that whole journey. If you want to relate that to the number of jobs that are lost, I think we will actually be losing our focus, right? We should need to see how it enables us to work efficiently, and how does the technology enable us to improve from point A to point B and point B to beyond. I think that is how we should start looking at technology. And as you rightly pointed out, even for the AI to perform accurately, we also need a lot of data. So therefore, the data accuracy becomes an integral part of this whole exercise. So as people say, AI is most of the time free, but the data is expensive, right? Therefore, we also need to spend a lot of time in actually acquiring the lot of data and making sure that we are providing the accurate data, so that the improve the efficiencies, and then we actually bring maybe that 99.99%, which Rajat was talking about.
Mr. Aggarwal, with your experience, did you also face this kind of challenges, how to maneuver and fit the AI solution without having to disturb the harmony in the workforce and the change management issues?
Yeah, I think I agree with all the points that Narayana and Pritam mentioned. Um, yes, while there is a concern for that, okay, AI is eating our jobs, but I think it's creating 100 other jobs for us, okay, and which are much better than what our earlier generation used to do and previous generation used to do. And in terms of business, right, if you have to think of it like a business, then we all have backlogs, right? As a business or as a project managers, we all have like a backlog of projects which we are never able to finish, right? So if you have to think in that picture, right, if we can automate some of at least even 30% to 40% of the work, right, I think we can just reduce the backlog. That's how we have to think, okay? And we can achieve more in less time, right? Which everyone wants to do these days. So obviously we can think it from a positive point or a negative point. It's like, okay, whether the glass is half filled or half empty, right? We if we are we as a innovators, we have to always see that, okay, the glass is half filled, right, and not half empty. And just see that yes, it can help us with reducing the backlogs. The second thing is, which is more like a human aspect. I think everyone wants to these days, especially, I'm not talking about like last 10 years or 20 years, even if there are operators, right, they also want to love their job. They also want to have change. They also want to, over a period of time, they are also frustrated with doing the same thing again and again. Okay. And I think that provides this ability for the managers and the HRs to kind of come up and change their jobs in some way, okay, and so that we can have a better work environment for these for the people. So I think while it does not have the technology impact, it definitely opens up another areas of discussion for people.
Absolutely, yeah. Definitely there should be a harmony, and I think it's all the way possible with AI, as I said, being the virtual assistants. save the employee workforce from doing mundane work and be interested in their jobs much more. With that, I move on to the next thing. And again, I would like to come back to you, Mr. Aggarwal, with this question to you. Since we are, we are into building the solutions part, and AI has been bearing the black box reputation, right? Giving rise to various concerns towards, let's say, for example, the data privacy, different types of laws in different parts of the world, compliance requirements, and especially responsible and explainable AI. So what, as the solution providers, are the challenges you think we face in these areas, and how do we address these, especially in the computer vision solutions, more so on the retail industry, where we probably capture unknown customers' video footage in a retail store, for example. What are the challenges that we face to maneuver our solutions around these challenges, and how are we going to address that?
Yeah, sure. So I think obviously there are many compliance standards
Yeah.
with respect to different countries and different geographies and different applications. But at least what we have seen in our experience, obviously the GDPR compliance is the most
Yeah.
crucial that people want to have. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think we can definitely make and develop systems in such a way that they can be GDPR compliant while having the same accuracies expectation from the AI models, right? For an example, like if you want to have the behavior and the pattern analysis and semantic analysis, as Narayan mentioned, you don't need faces, okay?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, it's like you have eyes, but you give a little bit of cataract to the eyes, and so
Yeah.
that somehow you can see that, okay, there is a blob, is a moving blob, but you can't recognize that, okay, whether it's Rajat or Narayan and Prabha, right? But okay, some person is there, and that's the behavior. They are picking up this product, that product. So that's why I'm saying that we have to make these specific systems where we can have, like in our cameras also, what we do is that we blur the faces whenever we are processing, and there is no way that we can give you
Personal
the
identification to.
personal
Yeah.
identification, and also the video feed is not exactly same as the surveillance feed, right?
Right.
And that's probably the reason that you should not think about using the surveillance cameras, because
Yeah.
the primary purpose of using the surveillance camera is to see who the person is, right?
Yeah.
And where that what that the surveillance is the reason, right? So that's one. uh, on the second hand, I think the responsibility, I think it's again, it's a behavioral problem. As a society, right? We want explanations for everything, but we have to see that it's not the human who is giving us these. It's an AI, right? And the
Right.
responsibility cannot be the same, right? Now, well, everyone wants explanation. We all want explanation that, okay, why it did that. But I think the systems can be made fail safe in some way, where we
Yeah.
can do, there are different technologies which we use in when we develop an AI system. I don't
Right.
know how many startups have been using those kind of technologies. We'll find out in the pitches. But I think having a nice prediction system so that you can make the systems fail safe is one way to prevent having these responsibility questions on the AI, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I don't know, like in the future how well we'll be able to answer this question of responsibility. I think the question has to have a little bit of it has to be a little bit of softer question, and then being such a hard question. Otherwise, I think it's a little bit difficult for AI to innovate itself, right? So that's my
Yes.
thing.
Yeah, definitely. And we also take care of the data sets that we use to train our models, try to avoid inherent biases. For example, gender bias or an ethnicity bias, especially in the cases, it should not be, if I'm trying to create a system to analyze behavior, It should not primarily say that, okay, people of who look a particular way are, it is inferring that, there is a potential fraudulent activity that's going to happen. So definitely there are multiple layers and levels that we take care of these things. And I just wanted to bring that point that people who build the solutions are pretty much aware how we have to build a responsible AI system, not to, cause any imbalances in the society. I would love to have your inputs on this, Mr. Datta, being definitely in the retail space. How sensitive are the organizations towards, these aspects when they adapt to the AI solutions, especially in the computer vision aspects?
I think, one of the things, rather than kind of talking about specific, I think most of the organizations are very sensitive about the IP, where the IP lies, what kind of data get generated. I remember, during one of our implementation days, we had actually signed up with a very top AI powered Salesforce enablement platform, and they were using the data that we generated to aggregate, but publish it on newspapers. This many numbers of SKUs have been sold and all. So I think organizations are becoming very, very more sensitive to kind of give their core data, because if I consider like the Salesforce space, this is a very core competitive advantage data. And there was a period pre-cloud when everybody wanted to move to like cloud. Then the came of package software came in, and software as a service. I think more and more organizations are strongly looking at companies which have the right privacy, the right instances where data can be secured and protected, but at the same time have the right rigor, so that we can make sure that we are able to basically not sharing everything, but also have the protective layer built around it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So with that, I think in the interest of time, we will conclude the panel discussion. Thank you very much, Mr. Datta, Narayana, Mr. Aggarwal, for sharing the insights. And I'm sure it has been a pretty insightful discussion. Each of us had very good takeaways from this. I would like to move on to the next segment that we will have the startups waiting patiently. I believe you had so many things to take away from the discussion. If anybody has any questions to the panel members or to us.
Hi, this question is for the founders, which are part of the panel, Rajat and Rajat specifically. How did you navigate the decision on when to bring on a strategic investor, if at all you should? Because I understand that what you're building has tremendous use cases for the e-commerce space, fast commerce, etc. So how are you looking at that sort of fork in the road?
I don't know how to answer that question, but because we don't have any strategic investor on our board. But I think if you're thinking about it, I think it's about the business value that they could add in your business. And I think that should be the only point why you should consider that.
We are a CV company, and we usually get asked from the investors that you don't have an IP on this technology. Now, in a software company, and we already like these algorithms that we are using. Some are of them public, and some of them we have created or modified in our way. How we can apply for the patents? I mean, the people who have already the CV companies in this. How you got patents into this if you don't have a hardware attached to it?
Well, I can take that question. So I don't think you can get the patents easily on the software, especially on the AI models. If you are taking the models from the public domain and then tuning it for your data. But I think the way we and a couple of more startups that we do when we have to show IP is to present the system as an IP, that as an application, not just the software where you have an input and the output. Okay, bring a system picture into that, and try to apply for a patent into as a system. And then I think it will be easy for you to present what the IP is. There is always, if there is an IP, I think it's about extracting the presentation out of that IP and then showing it to the investors. I know that in software it's a little hard, but there are ways to do it.
Yeah, hi, good evening. This is Chaitanya here. Yeah. So a quick question. I think Mr. Datta had mentioned a few use cases that he's pursuing. I would love to know what are the other use cases that the other panelists are pursuing or you feel that are valuable. That would be interesting. Thank you.
So there are multiple use cases in the retail industry. Few, as Mr. Datta has mentioned, in the space of improving your sales, right? On the other hand, you will have the demand planning. When you actually understand what's your sales forecasting, how do you improve your sales? That actually falls back onto how do you optimize your supply chain, and then that feeds into how much do you have to manufacture, right? So that's the value chain, and these are the scopes. You can actually optimize if you're into a CPG food products, you can optimize the ingredients in such a way that the quality of your final product is good. You can definitely use AI, computer vision in your manufacturing plants where you will be addressing the workplace safety. You will be addressing the automated quality check. So if you take just one industry, there will be multiple pockets where we can enable efficiency through using AI solutions. Mr. Aggarwal, if you'd like to add something?
Yeah, the other two use cases is people flow analysis. Where we say that okay, how many
Footfall.
people footfall, how many people are entering the retail store at what time, when, and then understanding different kind of behavior, right? And the more detailed problem is what Narayana also mentioned earlier, that about the sentimental analysis, that how they are reacting. The third one that I can mention is the performance, the ads performance, right? Like if when based on the ads that you're displaying in your store, how it is kind of impacting the behavior, and obviously it's related to some kind of a behavior analytics, but it is tied to how we can change different kind of ads to persuade the consumer to buy what kind of products, etc. And then fourth is definitely robotics, right? In terms of understanding the shelves, and what are the different items on the shelf, what is the status of the inventory, etc. And also the sixth one, where it kind of have to serve the consumer itself to reduce the amount of time that they have to spend in the retail store. Right? So there are a couple of these, and obviously there are many of them that you have, like if you think about it, to improve the experience of a consumer in a retail store, which can be there.
Yeah, customer retention, churn analytics, propensity, models that you can actually understand. So there are multiple aspects. Primarily, the business cases comes from how do you improve your revenue? How do you reduce your costs, make your operations efficient? How do you improve customer satisfaction, right? So there are primarily the broad buckets, and then there will be multiple use cases we can think of.
So I have a two-part question. The first part is for Narayan Murthy, and the second one, I guess, it's for you, Prabha. So given that you guys had a fantastic run from 2018 in terms of headcount growth, I wanted to pick Narayana's brain in terms of what did it change for him being that first employee to so leading the country's practice. So that's one, like what kind of challenges or what kind of strategies did he have to employ? And the second part is to you, Prabha, where how did you adapt from startup mindset to a consulting practice leader kind of mindset? Because I think those are two different ways to look at the problem. So I just want to understand your perspectives.
Thank you, Ajna. It's a great question. In fact, I'm not the first employee. In fact, Dinesh was the first employee, the first engineering employee, I would say. I was probably the seventh or the eighth one. if I remember correctly. So yeah, but again, see, when it was a great question. In fact, when I started off, with the company, our objective was very, very different initially. Our objective was just to have kind of a pre-sales office and then support our US business teams in solutionizing and then do some of the R&D activities and things like that. So that's how it started. But then when we started to think, in terms of how do we improve, the offshore presence and then get it more closer to our customer base, right? And then how can we participate closely into business development? That is when we actually had to travel to some of our Asia Pacific countries, and Dinesh and I have traveled to several places. And then we talked to our customers, and then we also try to kind of get more and more business into India directly. So that's one thing that we have done. But every step we kind of had a vision, like, this year, this is the approximate headcount that we look at, and then this is how it grow. These are the kind of customers that we serve. So we picked up some of those, and then it was also like, while we started India Development Center, it was also like internal competition, right? We had to go and then sell ourselves to our global leaders to say that, hey, why India is important in terms of delivery, right? And then we matured in that whole curve. We started with 5 people, and then slowly we started penetrating into each and every account. We had to start to our customers, we had to talk to our global teams and show our value proposition, not just in terms of the cost, but also in terms of the overall contribution, overall value. That value need not always be the cost. So, and then the moment we started showing some of the productivity numbers, for example, some of the projects where we were doing office analytics, for example, right? And then we were actually showing much higher productivity when compared to our US counterparts and then our China counterparts and Singapore counterparts, right? And then we had to really do that, to get and then to get more work into India. So that is the kind of an approach we have taken. And the moment we spent about 5-6 months in doing this in 2019. So towards the end of 2018, Q3, end of 23 is when we established in India. But by the Q2 of 2019, when we established this, and then thereafter it became an automated process. We didn't have to pull anything. It was more like a push. Everybody started coming to us and said, hey, can you help me to build a team in India? So that was the kind of an approach that we took. And then eventually, by the time we closed in 2020, and then when the pandemic struck, so there's a lot of demand for people. And that story, and I don't have to tell you, right? And it was like exponential growth that we saw in those 1.5 years, wherein from a 500 we went up to about 1,300, 1,400 people across various spectrums, and that's how we had we had to go through that journey for about 2.5 years. But there's been a fascinating journey. At every stage, we knew where we are heading, and then we had a strategy in place in terms of how do we pull the work, and we work very closely with our global teams, and we knew what kind of an office space that we need to build, and what kind of talent that we need to acquire, and how do we position ourselves, and then there were various factors that we had to, because it was not easy for us to attract the workforce as well. We had to adopt to various strategies in terms of and create, and we were not, to be very honest, we are not exceptionally well in branding ourselves, right? So we are one notch below in terms of branding ourselves. But again, we felt that, rather than branding and going and then shouting in the market saying that, I'm this, I'm that. So let our employees speak for ourselves, right? Let the customers speak for ourselves. So, and let the work speak for itself. That's the kind of branding exercise that we took. We could have been more aggressive, but again, that's what we have done. And that's what actually helped us to a large extent, because we have, I would say, a relatively loyal employee base as well as the customer base, I would say, because of some of these, strategies that we have adopted. And hopefully we will continue to do that, and a little bit more aggressive in terms of branding, and become, much more attractive to the marketplace. So awesome. I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Yeah, you did. Thank you. Thank you for.
I believe I had one question. Yajna had one question for me. Yes, Yajna, I believe normally when we think about a startup, it's always about you come up with an innovative product idea make your prototypes, and then show it to your customers. And the way you build your business model is that's how it goes. But the kind of startup that we started back in 2018, we put ourselves in a sweet spot where when majority of startups, the small shops, they have a product and they try to adapt that product into your business. We positioned ourselves as builders of bespoke AI solutions for early stage companies where they would like to adapt AI. So prior to NovaIQ, the startup that I was heading, I was a solution architect. I was a director of solutions, and a few of my colleagues, whom I worked with, we are into the solution space. So the kind of experience that we have and the knowledge that we bring in from the AI world, we were the partners of companies where they want to adopt AI, but they don't know where to start. So we started from that kind of a consulting stage and then we handheld our customers. Okay, how do you spot the business opportunities consulting there? How do you ensure what kind of data requirements you think, what is your low hanging fruit? How should you build your roadmap for your AI adoption? And then build a solution for it. So we positioned ourselves in that kind of spot. And after that, when we got acquired by Pactera Edge, it is the same thing in a bigger magnitude now, right? We started the deep learning capability. We started with 6 people, including me, and then now today we are about 30 core AI team, AI organization, and we have the expansion plan to about 100 people till the end of next year. So it kind of matched, and it's in the same vision. That's how we collaborated, and Pactera Edge has much more enriched way of service offerings in the space of AI. Yeah, Anubhav, over to you.
Thank you, Dinesh. Thank you all. Thank you, Surya, for that amazing panel discussion. Mr. Narayan Murthy taking time out and giving us a detailed overview of Pactera and its vision to innovate.